My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm Cloud Hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glow Cloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mike Gibbs, and I am here to help you build your technology career. Maybe you have a goal of becoming a cloud architect, or a solutions architect, or an enterprise architect, or an AI architect, or a security architect. Well, I want to help you. I've been network architect, security architect, enterprise architect for a little over 25 years. I've spent more than 2 decades now helping people get their first tech job, get promoted in tech. And you can find students of mine and clients of mine at places like Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, PNC Bank, Zscaler, NetSpoke, and other prestigious organizations. So I want to help guide you in building your career. I remember when I started my career and I didn't know where to go. And I made a whole lot of mistakes for a good 6-9 months. It cost me a fortune because of the things that I had bought to train, which were not even related to my job. And then I finally figured out what I needed to learn. And then poof, I was hired. Got some good, strong career advice after that. Was a principal solutions architect within 2 years. And then my career just took off. So I want to be there for you. So if you've got any questions, please bring them in. And that way we can help guide you on your career. Before we begin, I would like to tell you about a couple of things. Tomorrow, we have a security architect webinar on how to become a security architect. And on that security architect webinar, what will we do? We will go over the security architect role. We'll talk about what we really do in the security architect role. We'll talk about the skills you need for the security architect role and why you need those skills. And then now we'll tell you all the things you need to do to stand out and get hired, especially if it's your first job in technology. And we're going to do that tomorrow. It is completely free. So join us. The link to register for these webinars, which will be on Zoom, is in the description of this video. My team is just going to pop it into the chat box and we'll be ready to go. And I'll happily send you with that tomorrow. Now, also in the description of this video, we've got a lot of free guides to help you with your career, guides on how to help you pass the interview, guides on how to become, say, a generative AI architect or a cloud architect or other types of architects. And they're all free in the description of this video. And so please check some of them out. And of course, it is the holiday. So we have our Labor Day sale where we have 50% off for Labor Day. So please take advantage of that. That's off of all of our live programs. So Chris, if any questions have come in, please bring them please bring them to me. Adam123, Mike, what is the job look for cloud architects and other architects with AI and automation in the industry now? Well, Adam123, we have 2 types of jobs. Jobs that get better with AI and automation and jobs that can be crushed by AI and automation. As it turns out, there are some jobs that can never be replaced by AI, and they are the cloud architect, the security architect, the AI architect, the enterprise architect, the sales engineer, the sales executive, the senior strategists, and any other executive leadership. None of these people can replace by AI. Now, software development, cloud engineering, DevOps engineering, those types of things can be done by AI. And let's talk about the difference between the two. We have one set of careers, which I talked about first, which are really about strategy. They're about making decisions when you don't have incomplete information. They're about evaluating trade-offs and verifying which trade-off would make more sense for the business. They're about large-scale communication between teams. They're about exercising influence. They are about strategy. They are about creative thinking, analytical thinking, and solving problems. Those jobs cannot be replaced by AI. So if we actually look at the skills that we do as an architect, they're all AI proof. So if you're a cloud architect and you have to manage a large number of stakeholders across an organization, AI can't do that. So you're safe. Now, you might be a cloud architect and you may need to convince the CEO and the board to go spend $80 million on your cloud architecture annually. So that means you're going to have the business acumen to do it, the ability to sell, exercise, influence, what have you. So because of that, you're going to need to have a set of executive skills. You know, when you sell billion-dollar architectures, and I have in my career, you know, people don't wake up and say, how do I spend $1 billion? So you have to analyze their business and understand the how and why of the business. So we get ourselves in a world of skills that are not replaceable by AI. Now, AI can code, AI can configure, and AI can do hands-on stuff, which is why many years ago, you may have heard me say, get out of software engineering. In fact, we had a cloud engineering program, and it was a great cloud engineering program. But I decided as an organization, we were no longer going to sell it, and we were no longer going to train cloud engineers, because what can AI do and do well? It can code. It can write a bash shell script, a Windows PowerShell script, a Python script. It does all these things, and it does it very well. Now, what can't it do? Now, what is the thing that AI can't do? Well, these are the things that AI can't do, and I'm actually going to show you where the World Economic Forum looked at jobs of the future and which jobs that it said were going to go away. And I'm going to show you this because I want you to really see it, and I want you to think the way we think, the executives that are actually out there, those of us that are going to be influencing who we hire, who we don't hire, and what have you. So if we look to this situation, this is the core skills in the 2030 report from the World Economic Forum. They have skills that they consider out of date, going away, replaceable by technology. That's in this quadrant over here that we don't think we're going to need as many of the future. And these are things like programming. Some of these things are marketing things. There's a lot of marketing automation we can do, especially how we can do things. Quality control, AI can help regulate that. This is the stuff that's going away. Manual things, basic people to read and large amounts of things and number crunch. So this kind of stuff over here, this is the world of AIs replacing these. And then if we look in this top quadrant, we look at all the things that AI cannot do. So leveraging AI and data to help an organization achieve greater financial performance is something that we all architects do. So in every single environment as an architect, we're dealing with AI and big data, whether the security architects are securing it, whether the enterprise architects are building the entire strategy of the people, processes, the technology, for everybody, the AI architects that are designing it, the cloud architects that are designing the underlying infrastructure for it. It's all AI and data for all of us. Now, when we think creative thinking, this is the things that AI can't do. So if we evaluate an organization's technology, and they may be in 3 different clouds, 3 data centers, and have 2,000 different applications. It's not uncommon to see that, or at least 1,000 applications and potentially hundreds of different vendors. Now, when you get involved in these situations that have evolved over decades in global scale enterprises that needed to do certain things or connect to certain people or have weird, odd things along the way, solving anything, securing it, moving it, change anything is going to take a lot of creative thinking. And because of that, that can't be replaced by people or technology, the creative thinking. Now, we are constantly doing an analysis. What happens if we put it in a single cloud? What do we gain? What do we lose? Can we tolerate the risks of a single cloud? Can we afford to lose the better technologies that each one has? Or do we like the simplicity of the single cloud and the elegance of that, and we're willing to tolerate availability risks and lack of the best features risks, and including the technical data using proprietary services? That's the kind of thing we're dealing with as architects, wearing these trade-offs all day. Now, as an enterprise architect, cloud architect, security architect, at least a third of my time is spent managing stakeholders, understanding the stakeholders' needs, understanding the stakeholders' motivation, understanding how to get their support and their buy-in. So when we're done that, as an architect, we're leading an architecture team of 15 to 50 people along the way for 6 to 12 months. As an architect, we have to guide the executives into purchasing whatever it takes, including $1 billion of technology here and there. So that leadership and social influence is a big key of the architect job. In fact, the leadership and architecture, the analytical thinking, and the creative thinking ways to solving problems is probably 3/4 of our jobs. Now, note systems thinking. This is a big architecture thing. So this is the exact opposite of the engineer. The engineer is configuring the firewall over here, and the architect like me is saying, okay, I don't configure firewall rules, but I do have to weigh what happens when a person changes a firewall rule in our enterprise in Japan. What does that do to my people in Cape Town that are a part of the sales team? What does that do to my engineering team that's, say, in Karachi? And how does that affect the financial branch that's in New York City? That kind of systems thinking and impact analysis is what we do all day as architects. What's the impact of a change here? What's the impact of a regulation change? Now, as an architect, we're constantly managing talent. We're training people. We're developing these people that are part of our architecture team. We're leading a team of 15 to 50 people for 6 to 12 months or longer. So you've got to be a good leader and a good talent manager. Now, because the architect job is not like engineering, it's not how you're going to configure something. It's constantly whatever new tool there is, how do we use that new tool to enhance business? And AI is a new tool, which is why there's AI increases architecture jobs. We have to constantly be in this lifelong learning position. Okay, now what's the next tool we can use to give our clients a competitive advantage, and then weigh it, will it or will it not? Now, empathy is a big key of this job, and the ability to listen, because nobody gives you what to build as an architect, and most people don't have the listening skills to get it. So we typically even have to train that. So when you start looking at what's going on here, this Core Skills 2030 report shows that the architect job is the exact job description of the job of the future. Now, to be fair, jobs in this, whether it's a cloud architect, enterprise architect, security architect, the sales engineer is doing many of these things. The account manager that's going to sell the $1 billion architecture is dealing with a lot of these same things. The leaders that are going to lead the $5 billion of staff are doing these same things. The strategists that are evaluating all the opportunities and ways to beat and compete in the market are not replaceable. But the how-to, that's the thing. And whether it's, the AI writing code, like it's Salesforce, where it does 50% of the work for the most part, or Microsoft and Google, where they write, and as well as Facebook, or Meta, who writes more than 25% of their code with AI, and it's increasing every day with the technology expenditures. These skills over here, all this stuff can never be replaced by AI, and that's why this is one of the most AI-proof jobs in the entire world. That's why I like it. Great question. Guys are being shy with questions, so please feel free to ask questions. We can't help if nobody brings in any questions. And I'm not here for very long. I'm here for about an hour today. So please, if you've got some questions, please bring them now. Flying Kites. Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for continuing to do these questions and answers. How can you demonstrate end-to-end design competency to employers? So Flying Kites, it's a great question. And first, you have to have the competency to be able to display it. Now, how you answer questions, now that's going to be a very good thing. So, for example, if on an interview, I will ask certain questions, and I will intentionally ask a question that it looks like there's an easy option to do. And I will look to see if the person knows to go past the easy option, or to basically, or if they're going to knee jerk with a solution. For example, if I were to say very simply to someone, potentially a security architect, we were attacked through our internet connection, what types of things might we do, or to think about to be more secure in the future? Now, if that person says you need a firewall, that person proved to me that I can't hire them. Why? Because they saw a problem and they knee-jerked into a solution. Now, if that person said, could you tell me what happened along the way? Could you tell me how the breach occurred? Do you have any information coming from that, from your logs? Did you see if it came through via a Bastion host, which is a common source of ways to get in? Did you see if it came in because of a weakness in your firewall? Where did it come in? Did you see how the attack occurred? Now, if the person first says, see how the attack occurred. Now, if they don't know, that gives me much more questions. So then you might say, what does your organization's security posture look like? And try to get things. What are you doing in the way of IAM security? What are you doing in the way of application security? What are you doing in the way of network security? Now, if someone starts asking me questions at that level, I know what they're doing is they're looking for causes, they're looking for weaknesses of the system, and then they want to do something. So that knee-jerk engineering reaction where we give someone a fairly simple thing where it's, if they're an engineer and they've worked with network security and firewalls the whole life, they're going to get that knee-jerk, I want to go to the firewall. And why do we do that? Because we can't have an engineering perspective when we're dealing with an architect job. And that's why about 61% of the people fail the architect interview immediately, because they go straight in with an engineering perspective, which is what's in front of me, versus the architect perspective is what's the impact on the system. So there's that. Now, the second set of something where it becomes very obvious. So, for example, let's say I asked someone, what does it take to create an enterprise security plan? And that person says, well, all in all, it's going to take a lot of things. It's going to first take understanding of the organization's assets, the organization and what those assets are, identifying them, classifying those types of assets, quantifying those aspects, determining the risk to those assets, and helping to determine a risk mitigation strategy. Now, with that, we will determine various controls that we can apply at various levels. For example, as part of our overall strategy, we will have administrative controls, which are things that we don't want people to do, rules, for example, that we will come up. We will also come up with technical controls to keep people from doing the types of things that we don't want them to do, preventative controls to take attacks. So these are going to be the things that we're going to have to do. But with it, we're going to first have to understand what we're protecting, what is the value of protecting, and where we're going. Now, along that line, it's going to take a lot that's going to go into it. For example, we're going to need a good, strong network security strategy that we typically use, where we isolate various components of the network. And that may include things like firewalls, access control list, and other forms of network segmentation, network traffic prioritization, what have you. Now, we're also going to have to look at your organization's identity strategy, so we understand who the people are that are coming in, what they're allowed to do, and how to control them. But also differentiate between, say, customers and their needs versus what we actually need for the employees, to determine what type of a strategy is secure enough. So we'll definitely need to be focused on the organization's identity strategy. And if they're not in a place with tightly controlled environments like a data center, and they're more in a cloud computing environment, we probably need to migrate to something more towards zero trust, but we can talk about that later. Now, what also is going to have to go into this is we're going to need some level of application security. Now, that means we need to create a program where we're going to need to make sure that developers do the right thing, get secure sources of code, that we do some secure code checks along the way, that we have some application best practices such as input validation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, flying kites, when you get an answer like that that's comprehensive, that shows that you understand the entire part of the system, now you're getting into an architect. Now, here's another way that you're going to show competency, and it's going to be very clear on an interview. And if I bring someone in and I say, could you talk to me about cloud computing? Could you talk to me about its strengths, its weaknesses, and where I may use that in the business? I'm going to get an answer that's going to show me competency versus an answer that's going to show me incompetency. If the person says, we're going to the cloud because it's more innovative and it's cheaper and it's better, that person knows nothing. They got certified. They took in all the marketing branding. Because the cloud is not cheaper in most cases, nor could it ever be, because it's a landlord-tenant business. So they lose credibility immediately there. And what they don't know is that the data center and the cloud is the same thing. The only difference is when you have the data center, you get it all. And when you go to the cloud, you run out of virtual peace, which means you get good enough, never as good as if you did it yourself, but easier of use. Say the hotel versus the building that you own yourself. So when someone says, well, really, the key with cloud computing is it's outsourced and it's scalable and it's there and ready for you. Because it's there at any capacity needed, and enables a business to be more agile, add new applications, change business services practically overnight. Where if they were doing it in the data center, it would take time to procure equipment and time to get it set up. So the cloud enables us to do things much faster as a general rule, because there's less to manage, and that increases our velocity of doing things. But by comparison with the cloud, we lose control, which means we lose control over performance, we lose control of various elements of security, and we'll typically pay more for the convenience of that speed. So cloud computing can offer businesses certain benefits. Now, if we talk about what workloads, for example, high throughput workloads like AI and high performance compute are often much cheaper in the data center. So we should put those workloads there. But those agile scalable workloads placed in a cloud, boy, let them benefit from this time to market, let them benefit from speed. And that can enable you to outperform your competitors by doing what they wanted to do faster and give you a first mover advantage. So like that, flying kites, that's how you're proving competency. You're showing you're an architect in the way you think, the way they communicate, the way you act. And then, of course, the last part of any architecture exam is this. They're going to give you a very simple case study if you know how to be an architect. If you don't know how to be an architect, it's going to be a monster exam. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you a various business challenge and a technology challenge, and they're going to ask you to design a solution, document the solution, and present it back to them, to a panel of people. And then they're going to interrogate you on the way, on your presentation, ask you to defend your judgments, the assumptions you made and why you chose them, as well as the trade-offs behind that. And if you can do that, you're hired. And that's what you have to do. So great question. You're 62 years old and studying for the CISSP and want to become a security architect. Should you even bother doing so at your age, work independently, because who's going to hire you? So I think there's a couple of flawed assumptions. One is it's not a challenge to get a job at 62 years old. Sig, for example, was 63 when we got him hired. Robert was 60 or 61 when we got him hired. So it's not age, it's about your capability. Now, there is an absolute critical shortage of security architects. So there's that. It'll be a lot easier in most cases for you to get an architecture job that could pay you the equivalent of a couple $100,000 US a year than it would be for you to start a company and gain clients. So you don't need to work independently for this. There are more jobs than you could possibly find for this. Now, here's the thing, Najib. You will not become a security architect by studying for a CISSP. If you pass the CISSP, you will have a CISSP, but you will not have any of the skills to be an architect. And that's why you're going to have a hard time getting there. Now, I don't know what your background is. Maybe you did management consulting and strategy consulting. Maybe you've sold 50, 60, $100 million products or services before. Maybe you've managed large amounts of stakeholders in your life. Maybe you've presented to the C-suite and the board. Maybe you've been writing for executives and decision makers your whole life. Now, if you had that, you'd have a set of the skills. So the difference is a CISSP is a certification. And what they do is they ask you a bunch of generic stuff, and they basically test you on those generic things. And here's why I love the CISSP certification, why I teach it to all my clients. The CISSP certification will get you interviews. Now, I'm going to make it very clear. The CISSP was never going to get you an architect job because it doesn't have any of the architecture skills contained in it. But it will get you interviews. So when I train people, there's 5 phases of moving in. The first phase is getting the architect skills. Now, if you come to the webinar tomorrow, I'll give you a complete list of the security architect skills. And we'll go over what we do. But you have to have the security architect skills. And 0% of them are actually covered in the CISSP. So if you don't have those skills, forget it. The CISSP is just a fancy wrapping paper on a box that has nothing in it. You're not getting hired. So that's the first element, is you have to have the skills. Now, after you have the skills, what if I told you it's not your age or my age that's a concern? What if I told you that 89% of the people fail the architect interview because of poor soft skills? So your next phase is training your soft skills for the architect job. Because 9 out of 10 times you don't get hired for the job because of lack of soft skills. I'm not saying you, but anyone in general. So first stage is learning the job. Now the second stage is proving you can do it to the world. And that's creating a real architecture portfolio with real security architecture artifacts and actual work. Because now you can actually do the job. Now, only once you've got all these skills do I teach the CISSP, the CISM, and the CCSP. And why do I do that? Because that's going to get you interviews. Now, those interviews are meaningless unless you have the architect training and the architect skills in the first place. They're completely meaningless because you'll not pass them. But I use those 3 certifications just to get you interviews. And then the last phase is teaching you how to win the interview, because like David Lithicum and I say, we do 100 interviews and 99 prove to us they don't even know what an architect is in the first 30 seconds of the interview. That's the secret. So here's what's missing. And here's what's missing from the CISSP. All of the security architect stuff. And I'll explain to you what I actually mean by that. In the CISSP, and I love it, it's a beautiful intro to security fundamentals. I love it for that. But what are they teaching you? They're teaching you about a bunch of broad stuff. And just the broad stuff, but they don't teach you how to put it together and design it into a recipe. That recipe is the architecture. So what's missing? So what you have to do as a security architect is going to be the following. You're going to have to work with the client and go straight to the executive team and understand where that business is going. Understand that business's vision. Understand that business's pain points, its competitive landscape, and its challenges. And you have to understand that from an executive level. If you don't know where the business is going and you put in the wrong security architecture, you'll keep that business from getting there. So the first phase is that. Now, the second thing that you truly need to understand is you have to assess the organization's assets. You're going to have to find the assets from the key executives and the key stakeholders. You're going to have to quantify those assets. What is the value of those assets? You're going to have to look at the risk to those assets and what they be, and then recommend a treatment plan or a mitigation plan. Do you recommend transferring the risk to an insurance company? Do you recommend accepting the risk? Do you recommend mitigating the risk? And what is the financial metrics behind that? Now, in order to, and then it's about determining that how we're going to protect it. So at that point, we can't protect what we don't understand. So it's going to the organizations as a rule, and then understanding the key business processes, the key value streams, what they have, and how that organization operates. Because if not, we break it with security. And then that's looking in and examining the organization's technology. And this is going to take a tremendous number of meetings with stakeholders, which is not taught in any of this, with vendors, with employees, with customers. And you're going to have to take information and ask series of questions, eliciting information. And that's going to take 6 to 12 months of a team of 15 to 50 people that you're going to have to lead. Now, at some point, now you're going to take this team, create a team, lead the architecture, present it back to the technical stakeholders, get their feedback and input, tune it, create it back to the executives, get their buy-in, support, create the architectural contracts, create the architectural artifacts, present it to the C-suite, present it to the board, create a governance structure, and go move on to the next client to do the next thing. So none of that is taught in the CISSP. So these are the business elements of the role. And there's going to be a set of skills, which I'll talk about on the webinar tomorrow, that you need for the role. And then there's also going to be the architecture piece of putting it together. Those are the things that are 100% missing from the CISSP. So don't worry about your age, but do worry about having the skills to do the job, because there's a global shortage in cybersecurity of 5.5 million people. For every 100 jobs, we can only fill 74 of them. There's a 26-person shortage. So don't worry about your age. Just actually worry about being an architect. They're the hardest jobs to find, and no one cares about anything other than your ability to create a strategy to either protect an organization from harm or increase their financial performance. That's the architect's job. As a fresher, do you believe it's better to become a general cloud architect rather than a security architect? So, Two and Hughes, let me tell you something I learned a long time ago. If you want to be an airplane pilot, there's no reason for you to spend 4 years as a nurse, 4 years as an English teacher, and then go to flight school. The best thing you can do is go to school to be an airplane pilot. So, when it comes to excellence, when it comes to greatness, when it comes to being that person that wants that $500,000 or $1 million architect job, and there's plenty of them out there, what does it really come down to? How good you are. Now, what does how good you are really come down to? Well, it comes down to the amount of time you can spend at something. So if you spend more time in it than someone else, potentially you've done more and you'll get ahead. Now let's push that a little harder for a second. So what if you could focus your training where person B spends 50% of their time learning stuff that's completely irrelevant for 8 hours a day, and you spend 6 hours a day focused on learning the things that matter? Well, you're now much more relevant because in 4 hours you did what that person did in 8 hours because 50% of their time was on nonsense. And now you spend an extra 6 hours. So with 25% less time, you actually did 50% more. So it's a little bit about that. So your focus, your excellence, and what you're going to do is going to determine where you should be. So I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend, if you want to be a cloud security architect, don't waste any time as a cloud architect and go become a cloud security architect. Just like I recommend if someone wants to be a neurosurgeon, there's no reason for them to be a family practitioner for 10 years first to learn general everybody else's job. I want them to spend those 10 years learning neurosurgery and the rest of their life mastering their craft to be the best neurosurgeon in the world. Same thing. How did I become a principal or network architect in 2 years, Two and Hughes, when most people needed 20 years and most people never get there? I dedicated 100% of my life to the things that were 100% related to network architecture. And that meant for the first 2 years of my career, I came home from work. Well, I woke up at 6, studied for about 2 hours, worked until 6 or 7 o'clock at night, spent about an hour or two with my wife, and then studied till midnight. And I did it every day. And on Saturdays and Sundays, I learned a lot because I wanted to get real good real fast. But it was 100% focused on networking. And I can tell you, when others were learning Linux, I knew networking. When others were learning Windows, I knew networking. When people were learning how to write a bash shell script and expect and then Python, I knew networking. And guess what? That's why I got to the peak level, and most of them never got there because they were learning a little bit of a lot of people's jobs, and I was learning to be a master of my own job. But to be fair to and Hughes, I come from medicine, and when I was a nurse practitioner with my own internal medicine office, and the key is we spend our lives at one thing. We master it, and we master it all before we get our job. So just become a cloud security architect. Michael A. was an example of that. Emmanuel recently in the UK was another example of that. I just got somebody else hired as a security architect, and it's their first job. But they focus or their first tech job, because they focus so hard on one thing. Focus on the job you want, not somebody else's. Great question, though. Chris, you can bring in the next one. Please feel free to ask questions. Okay. How long on average would it take someone to become a security architect with no security background but enjoys learning about security? So let me start there. So how long it takes is a little dependent upon you and how you think and how you learn, assuming you provided the best training. And I can give you certain examples. So some people like me, and my background, Ty, I was trained by a Marine Corps drill sergeant between the time I was 14 and 18 and tried to enlist in the Marine Corps at 18 years old. It didn't work, so I spent my life in either executive protection environments, martial arts, and training of others, and were involved with high performance training for protection of some kind. So for me, when I actually studied cybersecurity later, it was kind of, and I had a strong network background, it was one of those things that was like, oh, in a couple months, I went from network architecture to security architecture. It was easy for me, but for me, I had a lot of the architect skills already, and my brain was always thinking security, security, security. So when I learned security, to me, it was like the easiest thing, but I had the executive skills. I had all the other skills already. So I was mostly there. I was just going from network to security. Now, I've seen people, and here's the reason I say this. I had a student named Nafuli, really, really smart person. He was in London. He left our program in about 9 months as a chief technology officer for a startup in Manchester. So, that's an opportunity, and I've seen people do that. At the same time, I say Ivan was hired by AWS in 6 months, and his last job was a waiter. But Ivan was motivated, excited, and loved it. And he's been promoted since he's been to AWS because he loved it, and he loved it. At the same time, I know other people that the security piece comes natural, but some of the executive pieces take a little longer to learn. And this is a lot of heavy duty things on the executive role. So some of them get the technology very quickly and then take a little longer. Now, I can say on average, less than a year. And I'm thinking about the student of mine that I told the other day, it's time for you to go interview because you are ready. And Asif has been with me for about 9 months. And he is completely ready. At the same day, I told another student with 9 months that they needed 2 or 3 months more because they were very close, but not there completely. And it wasn't at the same level. But 8 to 12 months is about average what it takes to work with us. Someone from the time they join us to the time they're hired in a normal, good economic environment. In the slightly weaker environment, it may take a few extra months just because people become more selective and you have to become better and you spend a couple more months in the program to do that. But I can tell you one thing, Ty, that if you're in our program, you stay in our program until you are hired. And I mean that. You stay with us until you are hired. We are not a boot camp. And we are here to produce people in the best jobs, and sometimes it takes a little longer. But I will say in a year, typically a little less, most people can, if they truly focus and they learn the right things, can change their lives and change their career in about a year. Unless you're in a regulated industry like medicine, where you might actually be able to change the career in a year, but they've got 3 or 4 years worth of mandatory stuff that's outside of what that's even related to the career, but they're just stuff that you need to do because you've got to pass an academic credential or something to get there. But about a year to change careers, Ty. And I'd really love you to come tomorrow to the webinar, and I'll really dive deep into what we do as careers. And if you want, I can even assess you on that, ask you a few questions, see how you do if you desire. Now, for the second question, from the start of the program, how long would it take to pass the CISSP or CISM? Okay, so Ty, let's talk about the difference in giving you the skills to be hired versus to pass the CISSP or CISM. Now, Ty, if you wanted to in our program, you could pass the CISSP, the CISM, and CCSP, I'm sure, in less than 8 weeks. But I'm more concerned about you being a security architect than passing the exams, because you've got a CISSP and a CISM, you're going to sit in the unemployment line. You've got the security architect skills and then the CISSP and CISM, and then you're on the average job, which is about $229,000 in the US for a security architect, with a range of say 200 to 300. And then we start getting into principal architects, which is 350, 400, that kind of thing. So, or above. But none of that's going to be possible with just certification. So that's why I say we have to train you first. That's why step 1 is becoming great. Step 2 is becoming what the hiring manager wants. Step 3 is proving it to the world, because at that part, you can get any job. For example, Delroy was a student of mine. He got a security architect job, and he didn't have any security certifications whatsoever, but he was qualified and he got hired like that. But I've got lots of people that come to me with CISP, SSP, CISMs, and CCSP. And then we have to start them from scratch and teach them security architecture, because the name of something and how to pass a multiple choice exam is not the same as leading an architecture team. Evaluating something in an actual multiple choice test is not the same as convincing a CISO and a CIO and a CFO and a CEO to go spend $100 million. Completely different environment. So for me, it's about a year to get you to have an actual job as a career. I could even point you to a website where you can go, where you could pass the CISSP and CISM in about a week, because with guarantees, they're all over the internet. They give you copies of the exam, although I wouldn't do it ethically. So passing the exam, not the goal. Getting hired, the goal. But you could easily do this in less than 2 months ethically for these 2 questions, for these 2 exams easily. But I'm more concerned about you landing that big security architect job than just passing a certification, because the certification by itself is like me giving a present to my wife that has beautiful wrapping paper and it's an empty box. I don't want my wife to be excited and open up and see an empty box and see nothing in there. And Ty, that's what we employers see when we go interview people with these certifications and they've got nothing behind it. Hope that helps. How long is the program and what is the course? So Dr. Anderson, what is your goal? So we have programs that train you for cloud architect careers. We have programs that train you for enterprise architecture careers. We have programs that train you for security architect careers. And we have programs that train you for AI architect careers. And in each one of those programs, they are focused on everything related to the actual job. And how long is the course? The course is until you are hired. And that means working in the role that you actually chose. So if you came to us for a cloud architect program and the day you're working as a cloud architect, you've graduated from our course. Because this is not a boot camp. I don't want to spit people out every 16 weeks and make lots of money doing it. What I want to do is bring people in, charge whatever we can, which is basically what it costs us to run our company, because this is my retirement thing and I just want to change the world. Keep people in the program until the day they are hired, and then have them say back, thank you, Mike. Look at the impact this has made on my life, and then have a different life for themselves, their family, and go off and do it again and again and again. And that's kind of our model. So our model is stay with us until the day you're hired. Because by that way, I know that, to be fair, if you're like me and you have a crazy, crazy, crazy schedule, then you have a little less time, then you just stay with us a little longer. That also gives me this. I might have someone like my wife. Now, my wife has the ability to learn another language in 10 days, and I've seen her do it. I walked into her practice one day. I heard her speaking Spanish with her patients. And literally speaking, she could learn it in literally 10 days. Now, I've also seen her do calculus in her head. But I promise you, there's something that will be much harder for her to learn. Because whenever you have a genius that's super geniusy that way, there's usually something else. And my point is, it doesn't matter. Anybody can get anywhere as long as they have the right education, the right guidance, and they stay with it until they're hired, which to some degree means a little bit of mental toughness. It means a little bit of self-discipline. It means a lot of it, honestly. And the ability, no matter how hard it gets, to just look at the battle in front of them and say, I'm just going to keep eating this elephant one bite at a time until I eat the entire elephant. Now, I would never eat an elephant, but I hope you get the point. The point is to stay at it. So the course is until you're hired, which I think I'm pretty proud of, that we're probably the only people that can say that out there, that we created an architecture program. David Lithicum, myself, we're really the only people teaching any architecture out there. And we can have you come into this program, at least our program, and you can stay with us until the day you're hired. And the course is based upon the career you desire. Want to be a cloud architect? There's a cloud architect program. Want to be an enterprise architect? There's an enterprise architect program. So that's what we're actually talking about. If you've got questions on any, please feel free to call. Please feel free to post a subsequent question here. Have a discussion with some of my team members. My team can drop that into the chat box, or just come back and ask me something, or join one of our webinars. I'd love to meet you. Curious what your doctor said as well. Hi, Mike. Would I please explain our executive architect training program? Absolutely. So if we look at the architect roles, and we look at any roles, let me kind of show you what my goal was here and what we were trying to create in this. I'll whiteboard something out with you, and I'll kind of show you. So if we look at the architecture role here, so let's I'm going to start with the cloud architect role, which is a midway role here. Now, in today's world, the cloud architect is a generalist. And why is that? Because every company out there is using 2 to 3 clouds, at least every enterprise for the most part, 98%. They typically have a data center and 2 to 3 clouds. Now, at that point, this means that this multi-cloud architect is responsible for absolutely everything. The storage, the compute, the data, the AI, all this stuff kind of falls into this mid-range role. Now, if we go to the level down, let's look at what goes down and let's look at what goes up. Now, as soon as we deal with a cloud architect, you're dealing with it's an everything role. So because of that, it's about a 75% executive role over here. And it's about 25% technology. And this is why people don't get hired for these roles. It's because they learn Python, they learn Linux, they learn scripting, they learn how to build. And then someone says, build me a business case that shows this $1 billion of technology spending is going to produce business value. Build me an ROI model. So, and that's the skill difference. So this is 75% executive and about 25% tech. This is at every company in the world, except for Amazon. For the most part, they have some funny names of the way they call their architects there. Now, this is not how-to, this is strategy. Now, because of this, when it gets involved in an enterprise, we're going to have a lot of networking. And this multi-cloud architect can't know the networking well enough to do it all. Now, we're going to need a lot of security, which means we may have 50 security architects working in a company to be focused in the organization's security strategy. They're going to be assisting the cloud architect. Now, you know what? We're going to have a data architect over here, and the data architect is going to be designing some data strategies, data pipelines, what have you. Now, we'll have some AI architects that are sitting over here. And we'll have some IAM architects that are focused on IAM strategies, like my friend Ian, who's a zero trust architect. So it's an IAM architect. I don't know, I deleted that. So here's where we go. And if we go one level down now, and I'm going to give you the economics of this and the finances of this in a minute. So these are typically the people that come here. Now, if you're a multi-cloud architect, you're going to be responsible for all this stuff and deciding who's going to come try to sell you, where you're going to put your stuff. So you're going to also have these little solutions architects that are going to come to you from, say, AWS, and they're going to come from you from, say, Microsoft, and they're going to come to you for Google. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to convince you to buy their stuff and use their stuff. So the solutions architect is typically a pre-sales role, and they are trying to guide us as architects into they're putting their stuff on AWS or Microsoft. Now, where else will solutions architect take place? Well, in the networking world, I might need equipment, and I might need equipment from Juniper, and I might need some from Cisco. So Cisco will send me a solutions architect to convince me to design, present, and sell their stuff. Juniper Networks will do the same thing. And the same thing will happen in security and AI. So the AI, when our AI architects will get solutions architects coming from, say, NVIDIA to convince us to use their stuff and provide design guidance. Now, here's the thing. These two roles over here, the security architect role over here, which is a specialty role, and this AI architect role over here, these are on the sweet spots of your macroeconomic and microeconomic supply and demand curves. Why? Because you can't find anybody that can do these roles. Why? Because somebody gets a certification in an AI practitioner and they don't know anything about architecture. And then somebody gets a CISSP and confuses that with security architecture knowledge, and we can't hire them. So these two roles are particularly high-paying roles. About 230 is about average for the security architect. The AI architect somewhere in there. Now these roles themselves are about 60% tech, 60% business, 40% tech. So they're still technical, but they're less technical. Now, what happens as we go up? Typically, as we go up the architect continuum, we then move into this next level. Now, this next level is the enterprise architect. Now, when we work as enterprise architects, it's different. So now we are looking at the organization's people, the way the organization does things, their processes, and their technology. So now it's such an executive level on average that this is now an 80+% business job, and at most 10 to 20% tech. So I'll call it 20% tech to make the tech people feel good. And when we get to this level, not only is this one of the highest paying roles, but 50% of the people working in this role never had a tech job in their entire life. Because this job is like a cross between this and say a management and strategy consultant. As we go up in our executive skills, we start reaching into these positions. We start having the chief architect. Now, this is an enterprise architect role, but in many companies, this is a $500,000, $800,000, $1 million plus role. And then there typically is a role like the people that actually manage the operations, like say the SVP of IT. And then once we get above that, we get to the C-suite, and we'll include the CIO over here as the C-suite. And that's typically what your reporting structure is. Now, here's the key, and this is the sickest thing for all of those of us, like I'm a CCIE. So this was a tough lesson to learn, because that was the hardest exam or hardest certification or anything I fought for in my life, honestly, harder than healthcare. As we go this way, where we start getting, this is a 90% business job, this is a 100% business job, this is an 80% business job, the salaries go up. And why is it? So this is a $600,000 salary. This is a $600,000 salary or more. This is a $200,000 to $300,000 salary. This is a $200,000 salary. And these two are sitting in there anywhere from the 2 to 300, the security architect and the AI architect, because they're on the perfect side of the supply and demand curve. And why is it that that supply and demand curve is so rough for these types of jobs? Well, it's because of this. It's because if we look at skills that are common and we look at skills that are non-common. So let's look at the worst place on the supply and demand curve right now, which is software engineers. And I love software engineers, but let's look about why it's the worst. So in a given demand, the greater the supply, and the greater the supply is how it gets flatter. As this gets flatter, the greater the supply. So why is the software development potentially the worst thing in the world right now? From a supply and demand perspective, because everybody's been told to learn the code for the last 30 years or more. Learn to code, learn to code, learn to code. Now, AI can code. So, and AI is coding, starting to code very well. And some companies have tuned it to be very accurate. Now, in software development, does it matter where you compete? Cambodia, Cameroon, Chicago, California. Doesn't matter. So now you're competing with the international world. So software engineering from a supply and demand curve is probably one of the worst places in the entire world right now. So typically speaking, you would see a lower salary. Now, as we go up, let's look for skills that are more rare. How to do skills like how to code? Easy. How to configure a router? Easy. How to configure a firewall? Easy. Because a lot of people, they provide free training on how to. Now, what don't they teach? How to design. How to evaluate the trade-offs that are associated with design. How to determine out which would be bigger on the business. How do I manage a large number of who can manage people, a large number of stakeholders? How many people can present to the C-suite and the board? How many people can close a $500 million deal? How many people can know how to speak to the press, speak to regulators? Because we do this as architects. How many people have these executive skills? So as we start getting higher on these executive skills, we end up much higher on the supply and demand curve. And almost all of that comes back to business acumen. I'm going to do this for fun. I never know what I'm going to Google, and I'm going to do it live anyway. So let me just, let's see. Let me just Google it. Hold on. Average salary of people with strong business acumen. Salary.com. Let me go find this. So if you Google right now, and I will share my screen so you can see that it's directly coming from my desktop, what I want you to see is that when you start adding large amounts of business acumen to the mix, salary gets higher. So all I did was type jobs that required high business acumen. Chris, if you can share my screen for me over here, the different screen. That's what I wanted you to see. So when we get off of this, now look at that average salary of people with business acumen skills. Note it's extremely high with that $700,000 range. So why am I obsessed with training people's business acumen? Chris, you can take that down. I'm obsessed with training people's business acumen because that's the secret of higher earnings. So when you ask what is that executive architect program, it is our enterprise architect program or the security architect program, whichever program someone actually wants. But then we have additional executive training. And this training, you know, we worked with a couple of business school professors to come up with the business school things that you would need out of an MBA program, just the key elemental things versus the fluff. And we executives added a lot of additional content with the goal of helping people go beyond just the cloud architect or the enterprise architect into more of the chief architect, into more of the VP, into the more director level roles and senior director roles and CIO and CTO roles. That's why we created that program. And the reality is, you know, while some people are worried about their 80th certification, which the hiring managers don't care about and they're not going to pay you for, the amount of business acumen you have changes everything. Because when you have the business acumen of the $730,000 person that we're talking about, and you still have architect skills, and you work for, say, Cisco, now you're at the client, and that client needs $150 million a year. You have the ability to build the business case, show that client that with that $150 million a year, they're going to generate $3 million in additional revenue. And what at a 28% margin, even what that would be, now they're interested. But they're not going to be interested until you can show them the money. As they said in the movie Jerry Maguire, where Cuba Gooding Jr. was screaming and laughing, and he said, "Show me the money." And that's what this is really like as architects. Can you show the chief financial officer the money? And the better you are at solving business problems and showing them the money, the more they are likely to invest in your solutions, the greater your commissions will be, the greater your bonuses will be, and the greater you will do in your job, and the more effective your architectures will be, which means you will bring better business results, and therefore you're doing well. Not a question, but you found our channel last week, and you just finished the Cloud Architect playlist, and you want to thank us for the amazing videos and great knowledge. Thank you so much, Kid Links, if I got that right. And if I said that wrong, I'm sorry, but thank you so much. We work really hard to help people actually go out there and actually build their careers. So thank you for noticing. How do you know the right course to choose, whether a cloud architect or security, and which one will always demand? Alexander, that's really a great question. So they're all going to be in demand, and they're all going to be in critical demand. So, you know, the decision you're basically saying is, if I'm going to be a physician, should I be an orthopedic surgeon doing bones and joints? Should I be a cardiologist, which is where I focus on the heart? Should I be focused on neurology, which is the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves? And the answer always is going to come down to, what do you love? And what should you do? So which card should you do? It's up to you. What's going to make you happy? And here's the reason. It's easy to get a job in either one with the right preparation. They both pay a lot of money. So at the end of the day, if you had a weekend, and on the weekend, which do I want to learn more of? Do I want to learn how to protect something? If that's more interesting to you, go for the security architect. If you're more interested in where do you put your stuff on the cloud, off the cloud, and what kind of stuff you need, then the cloud architect course is more right for you. But when you're dealing with these types of jobs, there is just extreme demand. Now, I can tell you I've had a lot of these jobs, and I can tell you my personal favorites. So I have been an enterprise architect and then chief architect, and I have to tell you, Alexander, I love these roles because I love being the strategist. I love going out there, being the leader. I like creating the team. I like going out there and being front and center. I enjoy it. And that's a role that was probably my biggest, most favorite role in the last 25 years as an architect. But where did I also have fun? I had a tremendous amount of fun in networking and security. And then the cloud architect is basically like a newer version of the network architect. The network architect used to be familiar with designing the networks and sometimes the data centers. And now we're designing, you know, the cloud as the network, the data center. So it's not that different. It's fairly similar, but a little different. But what is more interesting to you? Now, if you had the opportunity to suspend a day and learn about AWS's things, or take a weekend self-defense or a karate class, which would you like to do? Now, see me, I'd go to the karate class that I did for about 30 years of my life, and I loved it. But I would much rather go there than to to a marketing conference where people are telling me about all the new features they have that they have created. But that's me, because I'm more interested in security. I love security. Now, I naturally protect people from harm. I've helped train members of law enforcement and others on various components of martial arts and protection. I've been advising companies and people and organizations how to protect themselves for decades. So for me, I just love security, and I always do. But to be fair, when I leave my house, I immediately scan the roads. I look at what options are there, what are there. It's just part of my day. It's part of my brain. I am wired to defend. And for that, because of that, if you give me the opportunity, and I'll tell you why it matters, to focus on the cloud thing or the security thing, and I have to determine where I'm going to spend my time and my training budget and my fun, I'm going to naturally go to security every time because I love it. I'm like a kid in a candy store when it's security. And for me, that's why I did so well in that world, and that's why I liked it. Now, later in my career, I got to see that, wow, if you could create the strategy, and you could follow my favorite African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And you can create a team and bring that team to go solve big things. Well, that became even more fun for me. But I think the key is to just do what you love, because where do I not mind spending time? Security. You come into my house, there'll be hundreds of books on security in here, and I just read them, and each one that comes out, oh, I have to read this. Exciting, because my brain goes to security, so I love it. Now, at the same time, if we were talking application architecture, Alexander, which is a totally appropriate career, and I had to look at application architecture all day, this would drive me absolutely crazy. And no matter how much you paid me to do it, I wouldn't be happy. And because I wouldn't be happy, I would never go anywhere or do anything with it. So that's the key, is I want you to do what you love, because there's so many options as there are. So if you like to protect people, I'd say go out there and do the security, and you will love it. Now, what I would say, and I'm happy to discuss these things with you personally in our webinar, including tomorrow live on Zoom. Now, if you are out there and you said, I love AI, it is the future, I want to know everything about it and how we're going to integrate AI and robotics and AI to change the world, and you want to go start creating self-driving airplanes and cars and things and spaceships, you're going to love the AI architect role. So follow your heart, follow your dreams. And the reason I can say this is every one of these roles is so good. They're so high paying, but pick the one you like. I would have never been happy in dermatology, though I respect dermatologists, so I never worked there. Internal medicine, I was fairly happy with. And when it came to a dermatology rash, I sent them to the dermatologist. So that's what I want you to do. Figure out what's going to make you happy, and then come to the webinar tomorrow. We can talk, and I'll answer any questions you want live on Zoom. They'll all always be in demand, because there's always bad people that want to hurt people. AI is not going anywhere. So security architects are needed. AI is going to definitely be needed to solve problems. We're never going to live in a world without infrastructure, which means you're not going to live without cloud architects, because you need something to power all the new things. And the way most people have spent their money on architecture, not aligning their people, processes, and technology, they all need the enterprise architects for it too. So lots of opportunity in each. Dino909, you want to start studying for the solutions architect certification. What time does it take to pass? So Dino, first thing I want to know is, do you have a goal? Because I could have you pass that AWS solutions architect exam within one day. But I promise you, at the end of passing the AWS solutions architect associate, there will be 0 opportunities for you. And I also promise that if you just took the AWS solutions architect professional, which you could do in 2 weeks if you got the right practice test, you will still have no opportunities available for you. So Dino, what is your goal? Because all this AWS Solutions Architect Associate is the name of an AWS thing and how to configure something. Now, you won't do any of that as a solutions architect, so it won't help you get a solutions architect job. I've also interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people, and most of them don't even know what cloud computing is. So what job would you actually like to get, Dino? And then I can tell you how to get there. But don't expect to get any job by just getting all 13 AWS certifications. At the end of all 13 AWS certifications, you will not have the skill for any career at all. You will have 1/13 of the skills that you need for 13 different careers. But if you tell me the job you want, then I can tell you the skills you need, and most of them will be outside of an AWS certification, like 99% of them. Great diagram for security architectures, supply and demand. But do I have one for cloud architectures? It's basically the same. And do the X and Y axis differ? Not really. So In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. And I'll show you more of what I mean. And I'll show you why in the end, it's a zero-sum game. And it's a zero-sum game for this, because now let's look at the security perspective. Now the security, let's say here's software development. And here's knowledge of cybersecurity. So the security architects benefit instantly from people that don't know security, from the lack of security that's there. Because there's just such a shortage thing, which is why cybersecurity people are typically better off than, say, software developers by nature. Now, when it actually comes to security, people that know security design, now that's going to take us over here, which is pretty darn high because the people that have a comprehensive knowledge on security. But the security architect is not going to need to be as polished as the cloud architect or the enterprise architect. So they're going to need a little of this. They're not going to need quite as many executive skills. They're still going to need some, but just not quite as much. Because remember, it's 60% business, 40% tech. Now, the level of executive presence we can get away with in most security architects is a less. It still needs to be there. So what you end up finding is, because security architecture is rare, you end up here, which is why we have that like nice 229 average security architect salary, because it's high on the supply and demand curve. So let's look at the other thing. So let's say over here, by comparison, we have a little, if this is this number of people that have security knowledge, then this number is here as cloud. And why is it? Because the good news is for us is when we're dealing with cloud computing professionals, is the cloud providers made free certifications that taught people nothing about cloud computing. They didn't tell you that an AWS EC2 instance was a virtual machine, for example. They hid that. They didn't tell you that S3 is just the same object storage as every other cloud and data center. They don't tell you in that certification why you can't use most of their proprietary things. So in any case, it's the people don't really know much about cloud computing in the first place. So let's just say we're going to start here, which is a little less than the security architect. Now, what do we need more? We need better sales skills in the cloud architect, better executive skills, greater emotional intelligence, greater schmoozing skills, and all these things. So ultimately, we get to the same point pay-wise, same place on the supply and demand curve, but it's a slightly different set of skills. Because here we need, for the security architect, a little more tech skills, but here we need a little more executive skills. Now, in the end of the day, what wins? It's executive skills over tech skills. But this supply and demand curve is so good for the security architect, it enables those that want to be in a more technical role, 40% technical versus, say, 75% technical, or basically 25% technical, to be a little more technical and not get penalized finance-wise. So pretty much it's the same, and that's the difference. The other roles require more executive skills. The security architect can get away with a little less. Now, when that security architect has the same executive skills, they start doing much better. And that's what I could do. And, I recommend you come to any one of our architectural courses. You know the difference between a certification versus the skills. I'm also going to tell you that there's a completely free AWS Solutions Architect Associate program on this course for certifications, and it will be free. And there's an ebook that's going to go with that free boot camp that's on YouTube for just the training. But I want you to know that that is different than the skills that it's going to take to be hard. Big difference between certification and getting hard. Step one, have the skills. When you have the skills, then you use the certifications to get more interviews, but you've got to have the skills first. So for those of you that I got to see today, it was so nice spending some time with you. As a reminder that we have a How to Become a Security Architect webinar tomorrow. And in that webinar, I will go over the security architect role live on Zoom. We'll talk about the skills that you need and everything you need to do. If you've got questions about an AI architect or enterprise architect, it's on Zoom. I'll go over the various positions, the different skills. You're not sure why you're not getting interviews and you think it's your experience. I promise you it's not. You want me to look at what's on your LinkedIn profile to see what it actually is, or if something, we'll do that. We'll do anything we can on these free architecture webinars to guide you. We'll speak about the role and what we do, and then we'll spend a good hour or so answering questions. So hope to see you on the free webinar. Also, I wanted to tell you that we have a 50% off Labor Day sale while it's going on. So please take advantage of that if you want to work with us, train with us. And by doing so, you can stay on our program until you're hired. Of course, if you've got questions, you can obviously call us on any of our numbers, which my team will drop there, as well as obviously register our callback. And then tomorrow, what we're realistically talking about is come join me on that webinar. It'll be free. We'll talk about architecture careers. And I hope that kind of makes more sense. Come to that webinar tomorrow. And it was so nice spending time. If you learned something, if you had a good time, maybe give the video a like. Maybe subscribe to our channel, hit the bell to be notified of new videos, and send this to a friend. Because I always hate to see someone think they're going to get a certification and then they get a job. And that truly upsets me. Or people that want to be an architect. And I'm telling you, 61% of the people go on an architecture interview with zero architecture skills because they confused it with engineering and came ill-prepared. And that's why they didn't get hired, because they needed to go back to school and start from scratch because it was a different set of skills. So come join us in our architecture webinar. I look forward to seeing you.